So thank you for letting me come and speak today. I'm Justin Booth, Executive Director at Go Bike, but I also chair this body's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board. First, I want to thank the Department of Public Works, Nolan, his predecessor, his team. They have been very engaged in implementing the city's Complete Streets policy. This council passed the first Complete Streets policy in New York State back in 2008. The work that has been done by the Department of Public Works since that time has become a model across the state. We, as an organization at Go Bike, have been delivering projects because of the attention that Buffalo's got up in Niagara Falls, in the city of Lackawanna, with the Seneca Nation down in Cattaraugus County, in the city of Salamanca. We have projects happening in the town of Hamburg and many other communities across Western New York. I've also worked with small towns and villages in other cities across New York State, over 100 to date, to adopt and develop a complete streets policy and processes to implement complete streets in their communities. Because what we've seen over and over and over again, historically how we designed our roadways, the level of service that Nolan spoke to, how quickly can we move cars from point A to point B has consequences. While it certainly has a positive impact towards some people, we know that it has a negative impact upon others. It has an impact upon our health. We've seen, and part of our funding from our organization comes from the Department of Health, because the Department of Health has recognized complete streets as an evidence-based mechanism to improve community health, because we make our streets safer for people to walk and bike. More people do it, and you increase health outcomes for all members of your community. We know that getting more people to choose other modes of transportation is good for the environment, because we are in a climate crisis. Climate change is real, and the number one source of greenhouse gas emissions is from transportation, and primarily from our personal transportation choices. And so we need to choose how we get around and how that impacts our communities. Economic vitality, a really, really good example of how developing a complete street works in communities is in the village of Hamburg. Hamburg was a 4-lane roadway years ago. That community pushed back the Department of Transportation and turned it into what it is today. They've seen traffic crashes drop by upwards of 60%, and they've seen the public investment that was made in Hamburg the private investment has doubled, because people are getting out of their cars, they can walk and they can bike, and now, all those boarded up storefronts that were there are now lively and active. And we see this in communities over and over and over again. We also know this is an equity issue. We know that there's a third of the population in the city of Buffalo, a third of the households in the city of Buffalo that don't have access to a vehicle. We need to make sure that people can walk to get to the bus stop, that can choose to ride a bike without being threatened by traffic violence in their neighborhoods. We know that enforcement doesn't work, because that negatively impacts other members of our community. This council rescinded the school speed zone camera and focused on using design to slow speeds down in our school zones, because we don't want to have that burden upon people in our communities that can't afford to get a ticket. If we design our streets effectively, we don't need to use fees and fines to create the right behaviors on the streets. We can use design to exact the right behaviors for all users, not just drivers, but also cyclists and also pedestrians on our roadways. And so complete streets develops the quality of life that we want in the city. We've seen mayors such as the mayors of Chicago and Seattle having a competition of who's going to build the most protected bike lanes first, because that is what's attracting the best and brightest employees, and where employers are going, because at a global scale, it doesn't matter where our city is on Erie Canal anymore. It matters the quality of life that we have in our community to attract people here to live and to work and to bring businesses here. So quality of life is the currency of our future. As chair of this council's Bike Ped Board, I was the first chair. I continued to be the chair. We have continued to share any and all of our recommendations that we provide to the Public Works are also shared with the council. Councilmember Rivera's chief of staff, Valerie, is our council representative. All our meeting minutes, as soon as they're adopted, gets filed with this council. And I would certainly be happy to represent the Bike Ped Board on any questions and any of the recommendations that we provide. And I've spoken to this body, sharing our recommendations on a number of the projects. We have also partnered with the University at Buffalo through grants from NYSERDA and from the Department of Transportation to look at how our complete streets policy is impacting people here in the city of Buffalo. And very, very early on, one of the first projects that Public Works did was the road diet, moving Delaware Avenue from 4 lanes to 3 lanes on the section between North Street and Niagara Square. I believe that project was about done 2011, 2012. So we did a study to determine what the data showed pre and post implementation. And what we found is that Delaware Avenue, going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, now moves more vehicles more efficiently through that corridor. We saw a 30% reduction in crashes from vehicles, a reduction in severity of those crashes, and increased mobility for people walking and cycling. And we've seen road diets happen on our streets over and over and over again. Our city was built for a population twice its size, and why we built these roadways with all this capacity, but that capacity, never came. The volume of traffic never came. And so what happens is by having wider lanes, multiple lanes, outside of peak hour time, the roads are empty, and that encourages more people to speed and drive at unsafe speeds, which of course, the faster people are driving, the higher likelihood that if someone's hit, that person is then going to die. And so over and over and over again, we have seen this work. The State Department of Transportation has even identified roadways with 15,000 vehicles a day or less are candidates to go to a road diet. There isn't a single street in the city of Buffalo that has a traffic volume over 15,000 vehicles a day. And so oftentimes, and Buffalo continues to be the prime example of this across New York State, whenever we go out there and repave the street, the opportunity to reallocate that space between the curbs, it's a high yield, low cost implementation of just using paint to make our streets safer for everyone out there. So I want to praise this council for being the first council in the state to pass a complete streets policy. I also want to give credit to Public Works Department for the continued efforts to implement this complete streets policy. Every time we're out there, even doing these temporary projects on the street, we are consistently getting heckled. And of course, we also have a very large constituency of people that like to walk and bike. So we get a lot of praise. I know that Nolan doesn't always get the praise that he deserves, but they certainly deserve credit for the efforts they're putting forth. And so I wanted to come here and say, one, please utilize myself and the Bike Ped Board. We are here to serve this council and to provide those recommendations to Public Works and share that information and the data that we're collecting with all of you. We also have an opening on the board. There is an open seat, and would certainly would love to see the council appoint a new member to the board, and we're certainly happy to speak to that. And if there's any questions or additional information that this council would like to see on the data, the research, the studies that we have either done ourselves or have collected from cities across the country to help apply and to inform the decisions that are made here in the city of Buffalo, I would be happy to share that with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on Justin's point, I want to thank the Department of Public